Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be doing an NBA starting point guards tier list. The tiers are A, B, C, D, and F. The last two tier videos I did for NFL teams and quarterbacks ran quite long, so I'm going to try and shorten this up a bit. So to start with Kyle Lowry of the Toronto Raptors, currently playing in the finals, up 3-1 over the Warriors. I say he's about a mid-B tier point guard. I think he's a pretty solid to above average defender. His passing's really improved, especially this year with Kawhi and Nick Nurse's system. I think he's a pretty good on-ball defender. However, I think he needs to become a more consistent outside shooter and scorer. He can get points, but he's fairly inconsistent with it. He can have sporadic moments. So I think the one thing that could elevate Kyle Lowry to a higher tier or a high B tier would be to become a more consistent scorer. Now moving to Russell Westbrook. I'm going to put him as an A tier point guard. And I know you might think I'm just being enamored with the numbers, 3 straight triple doubles. Now I think he's a low A tier point guard. My thing with Russell Westbrook is I think he's the hardest. He plays the hardest on the floor out of anyone at any given time. He just works his butt off every game. He never gives up loose balls. He gives 110% all the time. You can tell he cares. He's a great passer, great rebounder. He's a good on-ball defender as well. I think he's also a good off-ball defender. I think he's pretty instinctive with steals. Now, the one knock on Westbrook that I have, as well as a lot of other people, is his outside shot is very inconsistent. He shot, frankly, horrendously from three-point range this season. I believe under 30%. And even his field goal percentage from the field was down, as well as his free throws were way, way down. So he needs to become a more consistent shooter. He's a good scorer, attacking the basket. He's great all-around player, probably the best all-around point guard in the NBA. But he needs to become a better shooter to become a high A tier. I'd put him at a low A. Eric Bledsoe, I think, is a mid B tier point guard. He really came on defensively this year for the Bucks. He was a first team all defensive selection, all NBA first team all defense. I think that sort of surprised some people. It kind of threw me back. I didn't really know he was that good of a defender. But I was watching the Bucks a lot this season. I could definitely see his defensive prowess out there. He's a very good on and off ball defender. Now whether that's in the Bucks system, that's a credit to their system, or his player, I think it's a little bit of both, but he definitely thrived. He's a good facilitator, a good rebounder for his size. He's a good scorer. Again, like Lowry and Westbrook, my knock on him is his outside jump shot. I think he's a sporadic three-point shooter. When he's hot, he can hit 3-4 in a row. When he's not, he can go 0 for 7, 0 for 8, 0 for 9. So improving his offensive consistency from the outside, I think, is the key for Eric Bledsoe. Now, Kemba Walker is a tough one for me. I'll put him as a high B tier point guard. Kemba Walker, it's tough to judge because he's been in Charlotte for so long and has really lacked the talent for me to really truly evaluate him. We'll see what he does this year in free agency. But he's a great scorer, great outside shooter. He's developed that off the dribble step back three, step back jumper. He's a pretty good passer and a facilitator. I'd say the one thing he needs to work on is maybe a little more defensive effort and consistency on the defensive end, and maybe with his rebounding. But again, when you're playing on a losing team, sometimes the defense gets lost because in terms of getting paid and getting the recognition, it's high based on the offense. There's a high emphasis on offensive efficiency and offensive numbers. He's definitely got that, but I think the defensive end of the floor, is where he needs to work on to elevate to that A tier. Now, with Chris Paul, a few years ago, you would say he's undisputably an A tier point guard. Now I'm going to put him right here between Bledsoe and Walker as mid to high B tier. The thing with Chris Paul right now is his injuries. He's been injured. He's arguably lost half a step or so as he's getting older. He's 34 right now, going on 35. He's still an elite playmaker in terms of a point guard. The definition of point guard, at least in the old school days, now it's evolved. Point guards are much more scorers now. But point guards are really the extension of the head coach on the floor, facilitators, playmakers, distributors of the basketball. And Chris Paul is still elite at that craft. He's still an elite distributor. He has an incredibly high basketball IQ, one of the highest basketball IQs in the NBA, next to guys like LeBron James. So he's still a very good playmaker. His outside jump shot has improved. It's not elite, but he's 6 feet tall. So his outside jump shot has improved. Now, defense is a problem now. He's still pretty good at getting steals. But again, he's lost a step defensively. He's lost a step overall, so that inhibits him a little bit offensively in terms of blowing by defenders, but it also inhibits him defensively in order to keep players in front of him. Again, he's 6 feet tall, so you do see guys try to get that switch on pick and rolls. You saw in the Golden State series, Kevin Durant tried to, he was posting up on Chris Paul often and having some effectiveness there. You see other players try to post him up. But again, because he's such an elite playmaker, some of those other deficiencies that would propel other players to be rated lower than Chris Paul is as a mid to high B tier, because of his effective proficiency as a playmaker and distributor of the basketball, he is able to be at that high tier, even though he's a little deficient in some other areas right now. Ben Simmons, man, I got a gripe about Ben Simmons. I'm going to put Ben Simmons as a low B tier. He's an all-star this year, first-time all-star in his second full season after he missed his rookie year due to injury. But, Ben Simmons, the jump shot. He won't even attempt jump shots, and that's my biggest problem with him. In order to get better at jump shooting, you have to take them in-game. I don't care if he's doing it in practice. I don't care if he's doing it in the offseason. He's not doing it in the game, so he's not going to get better. He has to do it in the game. I've heard Brett Brown say it. I've heard Joel Embiid say it. I've heard his teammates say it. We're okay with you taking the jump shots. Even if you miss, at least you're taking them. I mean, there was a clip that went viral when the Lakers were playing the 76ers. LeBron James was literally guarding Ben Simmons under the basket, and Ben Simmons was 3 feet behind the three-point line. I mean, that's how much cushion they're giving Ben Simmons. He's got to be able to drive it. I understand if he's not going to take a three, but he's got to be able to drive it inside to that mid-range area and either take the shot or distribute it and make the defense come up on him so he can get another guy an open shot. It's essentially 4-on-5 basketball in the half court with Ben Simmons because he won't take a jump shot. He's a fantastic passer, a fantastic rebounder. He is an above-average defender with his height and length. He needs to get a jump shot, and he can be one of the top 3 to 5 point guards in the NBA, but he doesn't have a jump shot, so he's not. Steph Curry, to me, best point guard in the NBA. He's the best point guard. I don't think there's much you can say to refute that. I think he's the best point guard. He's the best shooter in NBA history. He's he's more than an above average passer. I think his passing's underrated because of his shooting. The two things that are most underrated about Steph Curry, his passing, his ability to score in the paint. He has such a beautiful touch. And he's so deceptive with what he can do. He can pass the ball out. He can finish strong. He can give you that high floater. So he really toys with the defense when he gets in the paint, and he always usually finishes well. I mean, you have sometimes when he tries to dunk and epically fails. So I'd recommend him to stick to the touch floaters. But fantastic player. You could knock him for defensive effort at times, but I mean, he's so proficient offensively. His defensive efforts doesn't really affect his grade, in my opinion. A 2-time MVP, multiple-time champion. He's not a Finals MVP, but you still can't take away what he's done for that Warriors team. I think he's the face of that franchise, even with Kevin Durant there. So Steph Curry, I think, is the best point guard in the NBA. Now, Mike Conley, I think he's a high C tier. I may be underrating him a bit, but I think as he's aged a bit, and he's in Memphis. Memphis hasn't done well. They're not a team that you see nationally a lot, so I may be underrating Mike Conley a bit. You know what? I think I am. I'm gonna put him right here as a low B tier point guard in this league right now. I think he's still an effective outside shooter. I think he's above average outside shooter. I think he's an average finisher at the rim. I think he's an average defender. Again, it's kind of the Kemba Walker thing. If you were on a winning team, when he was on those teams with Zach Randolph, Marc Gasol, Rudy Gay, I thought he played good defense, but the key for defense is really effort and commitment. If you're on a winning team, you're going to be more committed to the defense because it's vital to win. When you're not on a winning team, you're not going to win. Again, like I said with Kemba Walker, you're going to be heavily focused on the offensive end because that's really the numbers that translate to your paycheck. We'll see. You got Draymond Green, great defenders. We'll see how they get paid. But there's no doubt that offense trumps defense when it comes to contracts. And I think that's what the focus is for some of these players when they're on losing teams. So Mike Conley, I'll give him a low B. But I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of Mike Conley because he's not on national television a lot. He's not in games a lot. I'm a Lakers fan, so when he plays the Lakers, I see him. But other than that, I probably see Mike Conley 5 games out of 82 games a year. So am I maybe even giving him a lower rating than a B-? Maybe, but based on my exposure to him, that is what I would rate him. Darren Collison, I'll put him as like a mid C tier point guard. He's a veteran. I think he's like below average to average at like everything. I think he's an average passer. I think he's maybe a slightly above average scorer. I think he's an average shooter. I think he's an average defender. I just think he's like the classic C tier point guard. He's pretty average at everything. He's not a solidified starter. He's the first point guard we got into that on a year in, year out basis, based on the roster and what team he's on. He could be a backup, could be a starter, depending on where you're looking. So Darren Collison I got as a C tier. Chris Dunn, he's a low C tier point guard. Maybe even a D tier. Coming out of Providence, he was a 5th overall pick. A lot of expectation going to the Timberwolves. Didn't really live up to that. Now he's with the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, the Bulls did absolutely awful this past season. They got a really young team, and he's one of those young pieces. But I think he's an explosive point guard, one of the better athletes. I think he has defensive potential, but I don't think we've seen it yet. In terms of passing lanes, I think his basketball IQ isn't obviously at like a Chris Paul level. So if he had, put more time into studying on the defensive end, I think his athleticism could help him pick passing lanes and get some steals and some transition buckets. But I think he's an average to slightly above average shooter. I think he's an average scorer. I see times where he has bursts of like 7 to 9 points, in a short stretch of time. And then, I see he ends with like 11 points, which means that he was largely ineffective the rest of the game. So I'd give Chris Dunn about a low to mid C tier rating. DJ Augustine, He's really like Darren Collison, and I'm going to put him slightly above Darren Collison. He's a veteran year in, year out. He may be a starter, maybe a backup. This year, he did really well for the Orlando Magic as their starting point guard, leading them to the playoffs, even though it was a gentleman's sweep, losing to the Toronto Raptors in the first round. They did take game one. DJ Augustin played awesome. I believe hit the game-winning shot in that game. I think he's an average scorer, average passer, average defender. To me, he's like Darren Collison. He's basically the same to me. I'll give him the slight edge right now. But that is how I would rate DJ Augustin. Derek White, I'm going to put him as a high C tier. More out of respect to like the veterans in the B tier, because we haven't seen a lot of Derek White yet. This was really his first year as the starting point guard for San Antonio, with Tony Parker leaving and DeJounte Murray being out for the year with his injury. But he played really well for the Spurs. The Spurs made the playoffs, lost in 7 games to the Denver Nuggets. But Derek White, had some very, very good games for the Spurs. I think he's becoming an above-average scorer inside. I think he's an average scorer outside of the paint. I think he could improve his three-point shot a bit. He gets a bit inconsistent, but he's definitely developed that over his few years in the NBA. Defensively, I think he has a lot of potential. He's a high-energy player. So right now, with the limited sample size, he's got high potential. He can get into that B tier. But right now, I got him as a high C tier point guard. So D'Angelo Russell, I'm going to put right here between Kyle Lowry and Ben Simmons. This year was a big growth year for D'Angelo Russell. First-time All-Star. Got his points per game up. Got his assists up. I think he's becoming a better defender. He has a really high basketball IQ, but I think that hasn't quite translated into production yet. We need to see a little more. He's proved that he can be a clutch shooter. He's made some big-time shots this year that D'Angelo Russell ice in his veins. Even though he's a former Laker and everything that happened with that, I still have a lot of respect for D'Angelo Russell for who he's developed to as a player. And whether or not he returns to the Nets, I don't think it's a system thing with D'Angelo Russell. I think he'll work anywhere, besides the Lakers. But I don't even want to get into that. That's a whole nother topic of dysfunction. But I think he's an above-average scorer from the outside. I think he could improve his inside scoring a little bit, get a little more efficient into driving the lanes. He has the speed to get there. He's an above-average passer, very good passer. I think he has very good defensive potential. Again, I think he's a good stealer, but I think he could still improve in that area. So I got him as a mid-B tier to low B tier point guard right now. Kyrie Irving is probably the highest B tier point guard in my opinion. And what's keeping him from A tier has nothing to do with his tangible game in terms of his shooting, dribbling, passing, even his defense is questioned at times. None of that, all of that, that's all in the A tier. However, what's holding Kyrie Irving back is leadership. I don't like his cryptic nature. He may have learned it a bit from LeBron. He's a bit cryptic. I don't think he says the right things all the time to get the young guys on the Celtics motivated and in the mindset that they need to be to win as a team. I think whether it's intentional or not, his personality is a bit divisive. So because of that, honestly, I think he almost brings their team morale and team chemistry lower. So I don't think holistically he hurts the team, but at times he could hurt the team. So I'm going to put him as a high B tier. His talent's A tier, but his leadership to me is not great. So to me, you average that out. His talent is still all-star, all-NBA caliber. But I think he's high B tier because of it. Lonzo Ball. Boom. D tier. And I'm a Laker fan. That was tough. With Lonzo, it's injuries. It's his inconsistent outside shooting. He's a great passer. I think he's an underrated defender. He's a great rebounder for a point guard. Right, I think it's Westbrook and then Lonzo. In terms of, I'd say Ben Simmons is a better rebounder just because of his height. But I'd say Westbrook, Simmons, Lonzo's probably the third best rebounder as a point guard in the NBA. But again, he hasn't been on the floor a lot. In the last 2 years, he's basically played a little over one NBA season. A little over 50% of the time he's been playing. His shooting's been ineffective. His playing time hasn't even been all that high when he has been playing. Now, that could be attributed to Luke Walton's coaching decisions. But based on the body of work I have, I think he's a D tier point guard. But a high D tier point guard. He is approaching low C tier. So keep it up, Lonzo, and you can get there. I'm rooting for you, whether it's to help the Lakers or improve your trade value for us to get Anthony Davis. I am rooting for you. Moving on to Trae Young. After his rookie year, I am willing to put Trae Young... Honestly, I'm going to put him above Ben Simmons. I think he's a low B tier point guard. Very good scorer. You look at Steph, he's not Steph in shooting, but he's, Steph 2.0. What he's showed in his rookie year, especially the latter half after All-Star break. Absolutely phenomenal. Trae Young did an excellent job offensively, not just shooting and scoring, but distributing the basketball, the one knock, defense. I think he's got to get a little stronger. And again, it's the Kemba Walker, Mike Conley thing. The Hawks were a losing team this year. They weren't really in contention for the playoffs. That affects your defensive output. And you saw it with Trae Young. I still think it's not just all heart with Trae Young. I think it is improvement. He has to get stronger. He's going to get posted up a lot if he doesn't. You're going to see people looking to get him in pick and rolls and try to get switches and try to get a bigger guy on him so they can post him up. But right now, I think he's shown tremendous improvement throughout his rookie year. So I'd put him as a low B tier. Damian Lillard, to me, second best point guard in the NBA. Damian Lillard is such an improved outside shooter. He was a good outside shooter. He's expanded his range and arguably increased his efficiency from beyond the arc while moving back even further, shooting further jump shots, which is just Steph Curry-esque. I'm never going to say you're in the realm of Steph Curry, but he's knocking on the door. Good passer. He's another high IQ basketball player, great instincts on the offense and defensive end. The one thing I'd like to see from Damian Lillard, actually two things. Number one, I want to see more defensive intensity from him. I think he has a tendency to take some plays off. That's to be expected, sort of, when you have that high workload offensively. And number two, I want to see him take over games more. When the Blazers were playing the Warriors in the conference finals, they got swept, but they had double-digit leads in, I believe, 3 out of 4 of the games. When the Warriors climb back, they're a third-quarter team, but when they climb back, I want to see Damian Lillard take the ball and take over. You have these assassin mentality guys, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, guys that, when the game gets cut and it gets close, they get the ball and they say, get out of my way, I'm going to go get a bucket. And that's what Damian Lillard needs to do. Too many times I saw him stand in the corner and defer to CJ McCollum. Damian Lillard's got to take over in those moments. But even with that said, I think he's the second best point guard in the NBA right now. And I hope to see him improve even more next season. Jamal Murray, I think... I'm going to put him right between D'Angelo Russell and Trae Young. Mid to low B tier point guard. My gripe with Jamal Murray is consistency. I saw him take over games in the playoffs. I saw him be an effective scorer, but I didn't see consistently. There were times where he became very ineffective. I felt like he rushes his shot a bit. You have 24 seconds on the shot clock. Sometimes I think, he takes a semi-open shot with 14 seconds left on the clock, but I think you could swing the ball, work your offense a little more, and get a better shot, whether it's for him or a teammate. I think he's an improved passer. I want to see more consistency on the defensive end, but when I look at what he put forth this year, the progression he's made and his potential, I think he's a low to mid B tier point guard. Jalen Brunson, I'll put him low C tier. I mean, Dallas didn't play all that well, but the argument could be made they were tanking once they got the Kristaps Porzingis trade. And they saw what they had from Luka Doncic. The argument can be made that they were tanking. But, that's hearsay. But Jalen Brunson, I'll be honest, I haven't seen a lot of him. But what I have seen, I've seen inconsistent outside shooting. He has the ability to score. I know that. I've seen him score. I think he's an average passer. I think he has the ability to be an average defender as well, even a slightly above average defender. But right now, I think he is a low C-tier point guard. When you look at these other guys, he's not in the same tier as the guys in even the high C-tier, in my opinion. So I'll put him at low C-tier. Elfrid Payton, I'm going to put... I'll put him right between Derek White and DJ Augustine. Elfrid Payton... He got like a lot of triple-double. He had like a stretch of like 7 triple-doubles or something. That can sort of be a vanity stat, though. It's not necessarily translates to you being a good scorer, rebounder, and passer. The Pelicans obviously didn't have a great year. Elfrid Payton has dealt with some injuries, so he's sort of had some difficulties coming back from that. But my big thing with Elfrid Payton is I don't see the motor. I don't see the aggressiveness to score. He's not a good outside shooter at all. He's a decent passer. He gets a lot of assists, but, it's a lot of assists to guys in the post to kind of, make a move and lay it in, or, a guy for a jump shot. I'd say I characterize his assists more system assists off him being the guy in position to make the pass for the assist rather than him creating plays, if that makes sense. I think he's a good rebounder for a point guard. I think he's I give him an average defender at best. So I got him as a high C tier point guard. Ricky Rubio, it's a bit harsh. Put him as a low C tier. Ricky Rubio is a great passer. He's a pretty solid rebounder as a point guard. I think he's a good scorer off the pick and roll, but I think he's not a very good defender at all. And I think he's a pretty bad jump shooter. And these are things that, he's been in the league now for 7 years, 8 years. He played in Spain before then. He was a 5th pick, highly recruited. He played for the Spanish national team. These are issues that his jump shot and his defense that we've known for years, and he hasn't improved. So I think he's a low C-tier point guard at this point in his career, because you can really game plan for him. Yeah, he's a good passer, but he's not really good at much else offensively, and he's a liability defensively. Looking at Dennis Smith Jr., I'm going to say Dennis is I'll say he's the highest C-tier point guard. If I can get him above Derek White. There we go. I'll say he's the highest C-tier point guard. I think Dennis Smith Jr. has a lot of upside. He's got amazing athleticism. I think like a 48-inch vertical. Incredible athleticism. Once he gets in the paint, he can finish on even 7 feet tall defenders. But I think the knack with Dennis is his playmaking ability. He has the ability to be a pretty solid playmaker, but I think at times he, struggles. I think his basketball IQ may need some work in terms of film study. I think there's times where he struggles making the right decision, making the right pass to a teammate to continue an offensive possession. I think similar things are with defense. He has the potential to be a really great defender, but I think he needs to work on his film study, knowing where to be in the right place to put himself and his team in the position to make a defensive stop. When I look at Dennis Smith Jr., it's maybe a little harsh, and I'm not saying that he's trying to do this, but it almost seems like he thinks it's more about him than the team, like he's trying to make a play for himself, or he's trying to put himself in a position on defense to make a play, rather than looking at the team concept. Offensively, passing it to get another teammate a shot, or continue the offensive possession. Defensively, making sure you're in position, not just so you can get the stop or make the block, the steal, make the play, get the rebound, but making sure you're in the right position to help your teammates out as well. That's just what I've seen, and I think that's more of a basketball IQ thing rather than an innate thing where he's trying to up his stats or anything like that. But I put him as a high C tier point guard right now. With De'Aaron Fox, I really, really, really liked his improvement from year 1 to year 2, up to his scoring, up his assist. I thought he showed more defensive potential this year. He's another guy. He's a very quick guy with passing lanes. He's able to read passing lanes well, get those steals, and really ignite your transition game. I think he needs to improve his outside jump shot. But I think he's shown potential as a pick and roller, as the ball handler, getting to the rim, exploding past the defender, and finishing. I think he's shown an improved ability to be a playmaker, really a facilitator as the point guard position. I believe he upped his assist about 7 this year, which is a really good sign. And again, defensively, he's shown improvement with the Sacramento Kings. So I'd put him as I'd give him about a mid-B tier ranking. Jeff Teague is not an F. I'd give him a low B tier. To me, he's Mike Conley, but on a playoff contender. So you're seeing a little more defense. Now, that's not to say that Jeff Teague is a elite defender by any stretch of the imagination. But when you look at defense, it's not just individually, it's what you do for your team, understanding where you need to be to help your team succeed, and I think he does a good job of that with the Timberwolves. Offensively, he's really comparable to me to Mike Conley. I think he's not as great of a shooter as Mike Conley, but I think he's a little better at getting to the rim and finishing than Mike Conley. I think they're both comparable passers. I think they're comparable rebounders, so again, I give him around the same range as Mike Conley, but because I rate him a little higher than him is just because he's on a playoff contending team that demands more defensive effort game in and game out. So Tyler Johnson, he's another guy I haven't really seen a lot of, so I'll put him here because I saw him more with the Heat, but I believe he got traded to the Suns. And now Winslow is the point guard for the Heat. But Tyler Johnson, he's a good scorer. Honestly, I haven't seen much of him defensively, so I can't really rate him all that well. This probably isn't a very accurate rating of Tyler Johnson. There was sort of a hype with him. He was sort of a diamond in the rough for the Heat right away. Oh, no, sorry, not even the Heat. I think the Nets had him right away, and then the Heat signed him to a big contract. Whatever team he started out with, there was sort of a diamond in the rough. He got a big deal, and he's sort of been underwhelming since then, got traded. And now, I don't know. Honestly, I haven't really watched much of him since he's on the Suns, since the Suns aren't really on national television much. But from what I've seen, give him a low C tier ranking. Reggie Jackson, I'm going to give a high C tier ranking to. I think he's really proven himself in this league. I think there was maybe a little more potential when he was with the Thunder. I think people thought maybe he could even be a fringe all-star, but he needed to move from being in Russell Westbrook's shadow in order to achieve that. So they traded him to the Detroit Pistons, and he's sort of just been average, kind of holding the fort down for them at point guard. Like 15 points a game, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 1 or 2 steals. Just really average at everything. But he, in his skill sets, he's sort of average at everything. But what puts him ahead of, some other guys that you see in the C tier is I think he's efficient when he's hot, when he's going, when he's really, on a roll. And when he's cold, he, can sort of be out of sight, out of mind. You sort of lose track of him. He sort of disappears, turns into a ghost. Got an APB out for him, but, sort of the definition of a average point guard, I think, in the NBA. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'll put him, I lied. I said Dennis Smith was the highest C tier. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. Again, to respect some of these veterans in the B tier. I think Shai, since last year was his first year, he really showed potential, especially second half of the year like Trae Young. He showed an improved jump shot, although he still needs to improve it. He showed improved playmaking ability, although, again, that's still something he needs to improve. He's a pretty good rebounder for a 6'6" point guard. His defense, he showed flashes of what he could be, which I believe is an all-NBA defender as a guard. 6'6", got incredible wingspan, ability to get into passing lanes and steal the ball. But again, a lot of that is instincts, basketball IQ, watching film, reading tendencies. Once Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just gets more repetitions and watches more film, understands more of those tendencies, I think he'll become a very, very good defender. So right now, I think he is a high C tier point guard. So John Wall's tough to evaluate. He was injured all this year. I'm going to put him... It's tough because I want to respect what he's done, but he was injured this whole year. The year before that was also underwhelming, even though he was playing. So I'm going to put John Wall here, right below De'Aaron Fox and right ahead of Jamal Murray. Because he was injured this past year, so, I don't just want to drop him below all these guys who have shown only a year, 2 or 3 of production in the NBA when he's shown, 8 or 9 years of doing that. John Wall, he's still got that explosiveness from what we saw last. I don't know what the injury has necessarily done to him. He missed all this year. We don't necessarily know when he's going to be back and able to play, but John Wall had an improved outside jump shot. He still needs to improve it. Defensively, again, it's a lot of the Kemba Walker thing. The Wizards weren't necessarily a playoff contending team when he was healthy. So you saw sometimes he took possessions off on the defensive end. But we need to see improvement from him for there to be an elite point guard in this league. So for me, he's a mid-B tier point guard. And honestly, that's taking what we've seen from him, his potential going forward, hedging it against the injury, and against, just the unknown. And you'll sort of just out of respect for what he's done in the league compared to some of these younger guys like Trae Young and Ben Simmons and Jamal Murray. So I'm going to put him right behind De'Aaron Fox because I really like what I've seen from De'Aaron Fox this year. I think he's propelled himself above John Wall. Justice Winslow, if we were rating him as a player, I would probably put him in the low C category to D category. but he really started to thrive as a point guard for the Miami Heat. So I'm going to actually put him... I know that sort of set it up. Like, oh, so you're going to put him as like a high C or B. Like, no, he's still got a lot of work to do. He's a mid-C tier point guard, right behind some of these veterans and DJ Augustine and Derek Collison. But the reason he excels so much at point guard, or really improved as the Miami Heat's point guard during the latter half of this past season, was because of what he's able to do in transition. Coming out of Duke, a lot of people compared him to James Harden. I don't know why. Like, he's not a great outside jump shooter at all. He needs to improve that. But I think his passing is underrated. And I think it's one of the reasons they moved to point guard, because they realized he can be a facilitator at a high level. I think his basketball IQ is underrated. I say underrated. I don't know how much people are rating Justice Winslow. He's been underwhelming in the league. And he just started being the point guard for Miami during the latter half of this past season. So when I say underrated, that's just like me personally, and what I'm guessing a lot of people are rating Justice Winslow. So defensively, he's got a lot of potential. I mean, he could be another guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If he stays at point guard, Justice Winslow is 6'7". He's bigger body type than a lot of these point guards. So he has the strength advantage. So you'd think that defensively he would have the advantage and be a very effective defender. And again, he's shown flashes, but he's got to improve. Again, Chris Paul was a pretty good defender. Again, he's taken a step back a bit, but the reason Chris Paul was so good at getting steals, the reason Allen Iverson was so good at getting steals, it wasn't because they were stronger, and it was because they were smarter, their basketball IQ, they read the passing lanes, they were able to make those steals and get transition buckets. Justice Winslow has the ability to do that and do it at an elite level. Again, if he is able to learn those tendencies, those plays from the other team in order to jump those passing lanes, he can disrupt. He can be a very good on-ball defender, disrupting opposing point guards trying to do dribble moves, trying to get past him one-on-one. He's got the length. He's got the lateral quickness to stop that and be a really good defender. We just haven't seen it consistently. So Justice Winslow is a guy, if he continues to thrive in a full year as a point guard in the NBA, we could see him move into this high C tier, probably low B tier range. So lastly is Colin Sexton, who was a rookie this past year for the Cavs. I'm going to put Sexton... I'll put him right ahead Justice Winslow. I think he had a lot of growing pains with that Cavs team, and honestly, a lot of it, I don't blame him. It's the team around him. Veterans were in and out of the lineup. A lot of young guys were playing as well that you normally wouldn't see playing in NBA games, to be quite frank. So it's hard to rate Colin Sexton, but I thought he did really well with what he had, which was essentially nothing, if we're being honest. So with Colin Sexton, my biggest thing that he needs to improve on is two things: defensive consistency and intensity. Again, it's the Kemba Walker thing. You're not necessarily going to see these guys perform well defensively when they're on non-playoff teams. It's just the way it is. But he needs to improve that. Secondly, his outside jump shot. He took a lot of them because he was a pretty high usage, high volume player for that team because he was probably the best player on that team last year with Kevin Love being in and out of the lineup with injury. So Colin Sexton, improve defense, improve his outside jump shot, great athleticism, not in De'Aaron Fox range, but in the stratosphere of De'Aaron Fox. Quick athlete, able to finish inside, just needs to improve his outside jump shot, and he can get in this low to mid B tier range in the next 2 to 3 years, I think. So that is my NBA point guard rankings. it's tough to rank some of these guys because they're just not on national television a lot. Some of the guys at the back end of the C group, Jalen Brunson, Tyler Johnson. So this is how I see the point guards ranking. You got a few guys that are really elite. You got a lot of guys in the middle, and then you have Lonzo Ball. It's not really a knock on Lonzo. It's more just he hasn't played a lot, and his outside jumper is Markelle Fultz-esque, which is never a good thing. So this is my rankings list. I know I said I was going to keep it a little shorter. I mean, I think it's technically a little shorter. Not much, but shorter. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.